In this segment, we'll talk about what Hobbes calls the right of nature. The right of nature is the liberty to do whatever will preserve your life with no obligation to desist. So the basic idea is this. When you're in this state of nature, that is, a state with no government, you have a certain fundamental right. It's not a right given to you by a government, it's a right that every person has in virtue of being born. And the right is the right to life. Hobbes interprets the right to life as the right to do whatever it takes to survive. So here's a quote where he expresses this idea. He says, "The right of nature is the liberty each man has to use his own power as he will for himself, for the preservation of his own life, of doing anything which, in his own judgment and reason, he shall conceive to be the best path to survive." Now, here's a question. Why should we think anybody has this right? And Hobbes will first offer an intuitive motivation for the claim that we have this right, and then he'll offer an argument. So, what's the intuitive motivation? Well, I'll adjust Hobbes's idea a little bit. Imagine we have someone here who needs dialysis. This is someone who will die if she doesn't get dialysis. She's walking down the street and she's thinking to herself, I'm going to die in just a few days without the dialysis, but I don't have health insurance. So she doesn't know what to do. She can't afford the dialysis. She doesn't have the money. So she thinks to herself, damn it, I have the right to self-preservation. So she goes into the hospital. She wanders around inside the hospital until she finds a bed with a dialysis machine. Having been through this before, she knows what to do. So she hooks herself up. She gets dialysis and she survives. Well, here's a question. How can you tell this person who needs dialysis that she doesn't have the right to do something that she needs to do to survive? She is going to die without this. How can you tell her she doesn't have the right to it? So the idea is this person has the right to do whatever will preserve her life, including steal, with no obligation to desist. That is the right of nature. So Hobbes doesn't just offer the sort of intuitive idea that we seem to have this right to do whatever we need to do to survive. He also offers an argument. And his argument has a rather surprising kind of twist. So it begins with the premise that there is no such thing as justice, and there is no such thing as injustice prior to contracts. We could substitute morality for justice and immorality for injustice. So Hobbes thinks that there is neither morality nor immorality prior to contracts. To put it another way, there's no right or wrong prior to contracts. So remember, in the state of nature, when there is no government, this person thinks about beating this other person rather severely and goes through with it. Well, according to Hobbes, that person there is not doing anything wrong. There's nothing immoral or unjust about the beating because there is no government. There is no contract between these two people. And when there is no government, when there is no contract, it's impossible to behave immorally. So premise one, there is neither justice nor injustice prior to contracts. Premise two, there are no contracts in the state of nature. So we get the conclusion that there's neither justice nor injustice. There's neither right nor wrong. There's neither being morally good nor being morally bad in the state of nature. Well, if there's neither justice nor injustice in the state of nature, then one can't behave unjustly in the state of nature. And if you can't behave unjustly, then there are no moral limits on you. To put it another way, you have the right to do whatever the hell you want. So, in the state of nature, since there are no limits on us, you can do whatever you want to preserve your life. And that is to say that you have the right of nature. So that's Hobbes' argument for the claim that you would have the right of nature in the state of nature. So in the state of nature, you have this liberty to do whatever it will take to preserve your life, and you might wonder what more particular rights that grants you. And Hobbes thinks it grants you the right to do whatever you want. It grants you the right to everything. So here's the quote, in the state of nature, there is nothing he can make use of that may not be a help unto him in preserving his life against his enemies. It followeth that in such a condition every man has a right to everything, even to one another's body. So if I judge it to be to my advantage to throw you off a bridge or to burn you to keep myself warm, I have the right to do it because I have the right to do whatever will advance my own survival. You're just irrelevant in that calculation. And of course, I'm irrelevant in your calculation. You have the right to do whatever you want to me. So unless there's government, thinks Hobbes, there's no morality, and there are therefore no moral limits on us. And we therefore have the right to do whatever we want.